Okay, so today's lesson is going to be on operations on negative fractions. So the learning goals are as follows. By the end of the lesson, you'll be able to carry out operations. So that means, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and you'll be able to carry those out using negative fractions. Okay, so negative fractions. We've learned about negative numbers. So on our number line, we've got 0 here in the middle. Our negative numbers are to the left of 0, and our positive numbers are to the right of 0. So negative fractions are exactly the same. They just sit within the number line. So for instance, if I was to put a line about here, that would represent 1/2. Alternatively, if there was a line here and I filled that in, that would actually be negative 1/2. So you can see negative fractions are exactly the same as negative numbers. They fall to the left of 0, meaning they're less than 0. And they're just fractions. So for instance, I might have here, I might have negative 3 3/4. Well, that's supposed to be 4. But you get the point there. So you can see the negative numbers fall on our number line to the left of 0, meaning they are less than 0. Okay, so there's just a few rules to keep in mind when you're doing your operations with negative fractions. So the first is the techniques and rules for adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing integers also apply for fractions. So what does that actually mean? Well, that means, for instance, if you have a negative number and you multiply it by a positive number, your answer will obviously be a negative number. So these are the kind of rules that we learned before. Or if you had a positive number and you multiplied it by a negative number, your answer will also be negative. Alternatively, negative multiplied by a negative equals a positive. Positive multiplied by positive equals a positive. So it's the same rule. So if the signs are the same, so if they're both negatives or both positives, your answer will be positive. If the signs are different, so one's a negative and one's a positive, your answer will also be a negative. And obviously all those rules also hold for division. The same rules, as I said, apply for adding and subtracting. So if you're adding a negative, it's kind of the same as doing subtraction, or if you're taking a negative, it's kind of the same as doing addition. So all those rules still apply when we're doing fractions dealing with negative fractions. The other point, the techniques and rules for adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing fractions also apply for negative fractions. So remember, when we're adding or subtracting fractions, we need them to have the same denominator. It also applies for negative fractions. When we're multiplying fractions, it's quite straightforward. We just multiply our numerators and multiply our denominators together. That also holds for negative fractions. And remember, when we're dividing fractions, we do the inverse. So we've got to flip our fraction around. Our denominator becomes our numerator, and our numerator becomes our denominator. So all those rules still hold for negative fractions. So I've got a few examples coming up in the next few slides. So we'll work through some of those together, and we can see how all those rules work together. Okay, so we'll start off with adding and subtracting with negative fractions. So the first one there, we've got negative 6/7, and we're adding 2/7. So you can see we have the same denominator for both of those. They're both sevenths, so we don't have to do anything. We can just add our numerators together. So our numerator is negative 6 plus 2. So our negative 6 plus 2, we're adding, so it's going to get closer to 0, so it'll be less of a negative. So that will leave us with negative 4/7. Quite straightforward there. Our second one, again, we've got the same denominators. They're both 11ths. So we can just, oh, my first one went away. Sorry. Anyway, so we've got 11ths there, so we can just do our subtraction straight away. So this one is 3/11ths take negative 4/11ths. So remember, we're taking a negative, and that's the same as adding. So it's the same as doing 3/11ths plus 4/11ths. So 3 plus 4 is 7, and that will leave us with an answer of 7/11ths. And we can't simplify that anymore, so that will be our answer there. Okay, for our next two examples here, they're actually getting a little bit more complex. You can see here that our denominators are no longer the same, so we have to find our lowest common multiple. So remember from last time, I'm going to write all our multiples of 4, which is 4, 8, 12, why is that 1 not working? And then all our multiples of 3, which is 3, 6, 9, 12. So we know that 12 is our lowest common multiple. So for our first fraction, 1/4, we're going to put that into twelfths. So to do that, we have to multiply by 3. And whatever we do to the bottom, so the denominator, we also have to do the numerator. So our denominator was 4, and we're going to turn it into twelfths. So to do that, we have to multiply by 3, which will give us 12. Whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do the top. So multiply our 1 by 3, which will give us 3. Plus our negative fraction, so our thirds, we're going to multiply that by 4 to turn it into twelfths. And 1 by 4 is 4. So now we're doing 3 twelfths plus negative 4 twelfths. So remember, when we're adding, a negative is the same as doing subtraction. So it's the same as doing 3 over 12 take 4 over 12. Now 3 take 4 is going to give us a negative number. It's going to give us negative 1. Oh, sorry, I should do my equal signs every time. So 3 take 4 is negative number, so negative 1. So it's negative 1/12. For our second example, we've got 2/9 take 2/3. Sorry, take negative 2/3. Again, our denominators are different, so we're going to have to do our lowest common multiple. So multiples of 9 are 9, 18, etc. Multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9. We can see there 9 is our lowest common multiple. So the first fraction, 2/9, that can actually just stay the same. And our second fraction is what we're going to have to convert. So to change our thirds into ninths, we have to multiply by 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. And for our for our numerator, 2 times 3 is 6. So that leaves us with 2/9 take negative 6/9. Remember, when you take a negative, it's the same as adding. So we've got 2/9 plus 6/9. 2 plus 6 is 8. So it leaves us with 8/9. And we can't simplify that any further, so we'll just leave that answer as is. Okay, so our last example here, you can see on the left we have an improper fraction because our numerator is bigger than our denominator. So we've got 7 over 3. So that's an improper fraction. And on the right here, we have a mixed number. So we've got 3 2/3. So even though our denominators are the same, we still have to do a little bit of work on these fractions. So you can either convert them both to mixed numbers, so change this first fraction here into 2 1/3, or we can convert our second fraction into an improper fraction. So both ways are correct, it's just up to you which way you find easier to work with. So personally, I'm going to convert the second fraction into an improper fraction because I think that's easier for me to deal with. As I said, it's not the only way to do it, so if you work it the opposite way and convert that negative 7/3 into a mixed number and work from there, that's fine as well. Both ways are correct. It's just what you feel more comfortable with. So negative 7/3 take, and I'm going to convert this second fraction into an improper fraction. So to do that, I do 3 multiplied by 3, which will give me 9, and then we're going to add 2 to it, which will give me 11. So it's going to take negative 11/3. So equal sign at the front, which I always forget. Don't forget it, unlike I do. That doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying. So negative 7/3 take negative 11/3. So remember, when we're taking a negative, it's the same as adding. So we have negative 7/3. That's a 3. It's the same as adding. So add 11/3. Right. So from there we've got negative 7 plus 11. So using our number line, we're going to add up. So negative 7 plus 11, which will leave us with 4/3. Now, if you want to leave that as an improper fraction, that's fine, or you can convert it into a mixed number as well. So as a mixed number, that is 1 1/3. So either of those answers are correct. It's just up to you which way you answer the question. So normally I would convert your answer how it's asked in the question, but in the question we've actually got an improper fraction and a mixed number, so it's up to you. So you could have answered as 4/3 or 1 1/3. Either way it would be correct, and I would accept either of those answers. Okay, multiplying negative numbers. So we're going back to multiplying fractions. Our example here, we've got negative 1/3 multiplied by negative 4/5. So thinking back to our rules, a negative times a negative will give us a positive, so we know our answer will be a positive fraction. So our answer will be 1 times 4 will give us 4. So we multiply our numerator, then we multiply our denominators. 3 times 5 will give us 15. 4 15ths is our answer. So if you can simplify, do that. Doesn't look like we can, so that will be our answer as is. And another example. So we've got negative 2 fifths multiplied by positive 8 elevenths. So we've got a negative being multiplied by a positive, which means our signs are different. So we know our answer will have to be a negative number. So 2 times 8, 16. 5 times 11, 55. In our second example, we've got a negative being multiplied by a negative, but we can see on the left there we actually have a mixed number, so it's 1.5. So again, you don't have to convert into improper fractions, you can deal with it as is, but I like to convert into improper fractions, so I will do that now. So it'll be negative 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3, sorry. Yeah, 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. Sorry. So negative 3 halves multiplied by negative 2 sevenths. So we're getting a negative multiplied by a negative, which will give us a positive because our answer is the same. So 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 7 is 14. And from there we can simplify our answer a bit, so we can divide both by 2, so we'll have 3 sevenths as our answer there for that one. Okay, dividing negative numbers, that should be negative fractions at the top here, so just ignore my title, it should be dividing negative fractions. So negative 5 sevenths divided by 3/4. So remember when we're doing dividing fractions, our first fraction, negative 5 sevenths, stayed the same, and our second one, we actually turn into a multiplication and flip it around. Now our answer, we're having a negative number multiplied by a positive, sorry, a negative fraction multiplied by a positive, so we know our answer will be negative. 5 times 4 is 20, 7 times 3 is 21. And that's our answer, so negative 21sts. We've got 2 more examples there. Negative 2/3 divided by negative 5/4. So our second number there is, we can see an improper fraction. Because it's a division of fractions, we're going to flip it our second fraction. So negative 2/3 multiplied by, oh, that's a negative number, negative 4/5. Actually, I'll just write that out again because that's a little bit unclear, sorry. So our first one stays the same, negative 2/3. We change our division into a multiplication sign. Our second fraction, we're going to do the inverse, so it flips around and becomes 4/5, so negative 4/5. There we go. So from there we can carry on multiplication. So negative times a negative we know is going to equal a positive. So our answer will be positive. 2 times 4 will give us 8. 3 times 5 will give us 15. So 8/15 is our answer. Our second example there, we've got negative 3/5 divided by 4. So you're probably looking at this going, oh, how do I do that? That's not a fraction, that's 4. Anytime we see a whole number, oh, sorry, I wrote out my first answer, it's the same as having that number over 1. So if you have just 6, it can be written as 6/1, because that's an improper fraction, and we just convert it to wholes. So 4 is the same as 4/1. If that were clear, there we go. So I would rewrite this for a start. So you've got negative 3/5 divided by 4/1. Okay, so from there we know how to do our division. Our second fraction, we actually do the inverse of it and we change it to multiplication. A negative times a positive will give us a negative answer, so it's going to be negative. 3 times 1 is 1. No, it's not. 3 times 1 is 3. And 5 times 4 is 20. So our answer will be 3/20. And once again, I have forgotten to put my equal sign at each step. Please do not forget to do that. So that's just correct working out. If I forget in other videos, I'm sorry. Please don't do what I do. Please try and keep those equal signs aligned and work down the page there as well. Okay, so that is it for this video. Hopefully this isn't anything too difficult. We've already dealt with negative numbers, negative integers before. We've already dealt with fractions before. We're just kind of building these in together. So we're adding those two different skills together, combining them together to deal with negative fractions. So there's a bit of work on that, but hopefully none of it is too difficult because you've already got these skills. Thank you. If you have any questions or concerns, please come and see me in class. I'm happy to help you out.